to start off our 6 o'clock hour. The first item was to address a dangerous building, to hold a public hearing for 124 Cary Road. However, Joe has let us know that they have not been able to provide adequate service or notice to the property owner. And so basically, you know, I'll open the public hearing and we will close the public hearing and reschedule it at a later date after the property owner has been notified. And we will set that.
Are you asking us not to ask you any questions?
Correct. I think the property owner has to receive notification or proof of notification.
We ask questions about the notification that's not being received.
Sure.
What's going on?
Is the hearing open, Madam Chair?
It's open.
Okay. So there's a very specific acknowledgement process for this. We sent out notices that had a return receipt. We did not get back acknowledgement forms. So there's an acknowledgement process that's to actually be filed with the registry of deeds. That step did not occur. So there's a mortgage holder in Florida. There's a previous known owner, and I think the town of Baylor was in touch with the previous owner, had some initial contact with the mortgage company. We did not get to a point where we had, for our files, the return, the acknowledged receipt for the files. I've been talking with counsel. That's a very important step in this process. And she advised that we do, just as you just noted, that I advised for the steps of the hearing, open the hearing, talk about this, close the hearing, and then in the body of your meeting, we'll have the opportunity to reschedule another hearing. It's a due process issue. So we just want to make sure that people have the signed acknowledgement and the town has filed it.
Madam Chair, I have a question. At what point does the town ignore its liability responsibility? This topic was brought up a year and a half ago by me. Plenty of time for these people to make a response, not casting any dispersions on that table or the code enforcement officer, but I am concerned. I don't ever want to wake up one morning and have the fire chief tell me, geez, we lost some kid in it. So I'm just leaving that on the table.
Thank you, Steve. If there are no further clarification questions from the board, then we will close the public hearing on 124 Cary Road and reschedule it during our regular meeting time. Next, I'm going to open the public hearing for the General Assistance Ordinance. And Tracy has provided some information, just a summary. This is an annual requirement that we adopt the General Assistance Ordinance and hold a public hearing to disclose relevant information. Franklin County does have its, of course, has its own guidelines, both income and maximums within the various appendices. And Tracy, thank you for making those extra notations. So in order to for us to offer general assistance, this is one of the requirements, is having this annual public hearing. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Joe.
One thing, Madam Chair, the appendices are up for review, and also the ordinance itself has been updated. The ordinance is updated periodically every 4 or 5 years. The appendices are what you see annually. Just to clarify, there will be 2 actions coming up.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any other questions before we close the public hearing? Seeing none, right. We are closing the public hearing for the General Assistance Ordinance. So we will now call the regular selectmen's meeting to order. We have a quorum, and we will begin with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a brief moment of silence to show our appreciation for those men and women in uniform. Thank you. Does the board wish to disclose up front any conflict of interest you see in the agenda? Any conflict should arise during the meeting, kindly let the board know. Joe, any adjustments to the agenda? Section 4, review and approve the September 7th regular meeting minutes.
I move we approve the meetings for September 7th, 2021, with any changes.
Steve's motion. And Shelley seconds. Any comments, corrections? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. For any public present to speak on a non-agenda item? Boards and committees, we've got the July 13th minutes from the Sewer Commission organizational meeting, the July 13th Sewer Commission regular meeting, and the August 25th Planning Board regular meeting. Any comments or questions from those minutes? Yes.
Not necessarily from the minutes, sorry. Keith, when is the next rate period for the sewer commission? Let me know when that's.
I'll get back to that.
Consult your calendar.
Still working.
Thank you.
Rural water. Thank you.
I have one thing from the August 25th Planning Board regular meeting, and it was suggested that I watch it, and basically a member of the public had said that there was a verbal permission given to a company that the town dock is at their availability to use for their clientele. And considering what we went through with the Senate matter, I think it would be wise to correct and clarify that, perhaps at their next meeting, that the town I think what the Senate's ended up being allowed to do was to use, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong,
No, you're right.
was to use the ramp over by the swim area, but not the public access boat launch and dock area. Consent items. So we start off with chapter 38. Does the board wish to schedule another workshop? And if so, do you prefer the 5 o'clock hour, or do you want it at 6 o'clock on an off Monday?
I personally don't think we need another workshop. I think we need a public hearing.
I would like one more workshop. Yes.
I almost think it needs to go back to the planning board. I know, don't switch. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And the only reason I'm making this suggestion, Bailey, is because, as Mark pointed out, the majority of these changes and these discussions happened during the time period of Zoom meetings. And a lot of people missed out on, I mean, clearly you folks are here tonight and not at a planning board meeting, and had you known it was discussed at a planning board meeting, that's where you would have taken this up.
I had asked.
So my big concern is that because of the Zoom error, a lot of this has been lost in translation. I know, I'm so sorry, she did not want to hear that.
Yeah.
She's got her hand up.
Any other comments from the board before I head over to Bailey? Okay, Bailey, comment.
I just want to make it clear that the final planning board public hearing, I believe actually the final 2 planning board public hearings, there were multiple, were held outside of the time where Zoom was the only option. We did have public hearings where public were allowed to be in attendance in person.
Mark?
I would tend to agree with Ethna, but I believe you should have another workshop and have enough time to let people get the word out about the workshop, and that there'd be a copy to review, you know, at the town office, and if that's going to be the only place, if there's not going to be one on the town's webpage, or a link to it. I think even if, and I'm sure Bailey's correct that if their last ones may have gone past Zoom, but I don't believe there was any attendance. And so I just think, because when we make changes to these things, I've seen it before, you know, people aren't aware of them, and then when they go to do something and things have changed, you know, they're in an uproar, and it just creates a lot of discontent. I think where this isn't going till June to be voted on, we ought to take the time and make the best effort we can to let people know that it's out there, and then they can come to a public hearing and comment on it, and then, you know, you can have your public hearing on it and go along. But, you know, I think it should be not a rush process.
The only reason I suggested going back to the planning board, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said the planning board is the board that will make changes to this.
Right.
That we don't have the authority to tell you we want something changed. It's got to go back to the planning board to change it.
We have the authority to put it before the voters or not.
We have the authority to put the draft document from the planning board. If somebody wants changes, they've got to take the changes back to the planning board, is what I thought she said. Which is why it doesn't make any sense for us to hold another public hearing. If there are people who have changes, they need to go back to them.
Bailey?
I agree with your statement. I would ask that the board hold one more workshop to address any questions you may have, so that we can avoid going back to the planning board over multiple times.
Okay.
You know I love you, hang on. I think everything that's going right now is correct. Have them have their public hearings. Then let us see the changes, because that to me is when we will then to be able to formulate a better process. If we try to circumvent it before, we're negating all of that. That's my thought on that. So let you do your public hearings and then we'll hold our workshop. That's my thought. I'd rather see what the public has to say before I jump in, or any of us jump in.
Board comment. Yeah, Shelley?
So is there any way to do like a email blast to all the businesses, because those are through the chamber, where those can say, look, here's your opportunity to look at the chapter. If you have any questions, like if they have like this something on our website that could tag any comments. Sorry, that has anything that you can add comments to it and things like that. And I'm just asking, because I know that like when it goes back and forth, there is going to be somebody that's like, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, that's.
How about this, Madam Chair? We combine our workshop, the public hearing, with the planning board. We have one combined group. We hear, they hear. I mean, I just don't want to take up selectmen's meetings times for this, because it's important. Mark is correct. All of them are correct.
It's a lot of change.
Well, and we're not even,
Hold it at the school.
Ethan, anything?
I'm just listening.
Okay. Mark?
I think a combined workshop with the planning board and board of selectmen is probably a good idea. You folks tend to have a lot of patience at those meetings. And I think that's important. And it saves the duplicity of having two separate meetings. If you're all together, you hear what people have to say all at once, and you can get your questions answered among each other as well.
Bailey?
I need to bring this idea to planning board on Wednesday. So if any proposal is made, would this be a public hearing held by the planning board that the board of selectmen would be attending as public asking questions?
When the board of selectmen has a quorum, it's a selectmen's meeting.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't matter, you're all gonna hear it. I mean, whether it's a selectmen's meeting with the planning board and the public, we're accomplishing the same, I'm sorry, he's more important.
All right, yeah, so Steve's point is valid. Any thoughts on holding a joint? So let me just make sure I understand what folks are saying is to hold a joint board of selectmen and planning board public hearing.
Not a workshop?
Or a workshop, that's what I, well, a public hearing requires certain notice. And a workshop is just, meeting and discussing nothing, it's usually for the sake of clarification. So, and that was the purpose of this. It's a workshop for us. It's the initial discussion publicly about Chapter 38 with the board able to ask some clarifying questions. And in order for, at a public hearing, ideally you're in a position to explain and educate. And if we have questions, we need to get them out before a public hearing. So that would be the difference. Thoughts on a joint workshop? Or do you want one more workshop just with Bailey and then moving on to discuss our questions and concerns directly in a workshop with the planning board?
A workshop with the planning board, how do you organize this meeting?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because it's fine, well, to say, yeah, let's do that. And then we spend half the meeting trying to figure out who has authority, who's running it, who's whatever. Is it gonna be beneficial to do it at all by the time we're done?
I almost think we probably need, just given, we gave the sign ordinance, or questions, their opportunity to ask questions. And I almost think we, another workshop directly with Bailey and see, maybe we get through it all and, and then decide at that point whether we want something joint with the planning board or not.
I have a question about how things.
Go ahead.
If it goes back to the planning board, can the public attend that?
Of course.
And, okay, so so the public could attend the planning board and have input at that point. Okay, it just makes it sound like if it goes back to planning board, nobody gets to say anything.
Oh, no.
So you can put.
All boards are public.
Okay,
So you can attend any meeting you want.
okay,
So you
okay.
And we actually have the public meetings anyway with the budget committee, so those aren't any problem.
So there's nothing that's.
Brand new hearing aids, I still can't hear you.
So we have the budget committee with the select board that meets together, and that's a public hearing that we have.
Right.
And we have met with the park commission when we were doing the park with the select board.
So if we do this, then Cindy's gonna run the meeting, because that's how we do all the rest of these. If somebody sits with us, then the chair of the selectmen always runs the meetings.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then anyone can interject.
all right, let's do that.
Thoughts? Everyone okay with that? Because we will then need to, reach out and have that scheduled on a,
I'm good with whatever best gets all of these changes in front of people, because we've never changed this much of this document
That's right.
at one time. This is insanity.
Right.
Because it's not just signs, it's not just lighting. We are making so many changes to the zoning ordinance. I have never seen us do it like this before.
Yeah.
We've taken it in sections. We've made it
Right.
amendments in sections. We have never done this.
well, the other.
So I am highly concerned that people don't know we're planning this.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Mark?
In light of Ethna's comments, would it be reasonable to ask Bailey which portions of this most affect her confidence in the quality of the permits that she's issuing, and tackle those subjects first? And if this ends up taking too long, at least we could get the ones that are most important to her in front of the voters and have a good understanding of.
Bailey?
That's been a topic of discussion previously. The way that the changes have happened are so intertwined within the whole chapter that it would be hard to pull them out and decide which one. Even deciding which one is most important is difficult, but then once that decision is made, being able to then take those changes and only enact those changes would be exponentially more difficult.
Really?
I was just wondering, because in the past, we've adopted the national building code. We've adopted the state standards for shoreline zoning. We've just voted to adopt things that have been done for us. So those sections I was hoping could be done. And then if, some of the particular building things that are causing you angst, if that section was, if you could break it out, that's all I was getting at, but if it's too messy doing that, that answers my question.
Millie?
I'm just thinking organizational wise, wouldn't it be better to say a certain day, a certain time, each section will be 5:10 to 5:20. We're going to discuss this section. 5:20 to 5:40, we're going to discuss this section. So that you get through the whole document, but people have time to really look at it and read. But I agree with Ethna. Nobody knows that this is happening.
Yeah.
Nobody. And we've been trying very hard to be involved in the process. And we still don't have a clear understanding. So I think it's very important to have the public hearing, workshop, whatever you want to call it, but have a very good plan of each section and have that publicized. So if someone is only interested in shoreland, they can come at 5:25. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And then you will get through the whole document and everyone will have a chance to say their piece. But it is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect a lot of people. And they don't know it.
I like the idea of putting in a chamber blast so that everybody will know.
Yeah.
And we can make notification.
So though the document because you said the document's too large to put on the website, is that correct?
I believe so. I made a note to try that again.
Okay.
See if we can, maybe we can break it into pieces. Get it out there.
All right, so it sounds like with this matter, we can't have too many workshops or, to discuss all of the, all the concerns and just get it out there. Because again, we need to be able to explain this process.
I'd like to see,
Yeah.
I'd like to see a post on Facebook. More of an advertisement when it comes to something like this, because it's so big and all the concerns everybody has. to be a post like this. Do you own a business? Do you have something to do with construction? Do you have a sign in front of your business? Are you involved in this? If that's you, then you should probably pay attention to what we're saying here. You might want to show up to one of these meetings. We're having several workshops, but there are 80 pages of changes all across this board of criteria. And if any of these things in bold letters has to do with you, you might want to come and show up and say your piece and do that more than once.
All right. Yep, Shelley, so we need to schedule something, then move on.
So, if the whole document can't fit, is there any way to do sections? Like
Yes,
if you do
that's-
each section and say, section of the week, this is what we're focusing on. Send out an email blast, everyone's focusing on that stuff. Send comments to this email address, I don't want to bombard you, but maybe create one.
Okay, Bailey?
We can't receive comments not in a public forum like this to make changes, so they would have to come to a meeting to make suggestions and comments.
So people like, they send us letters and stuff like that, as a select board. I mean, if they had questions or something like that, it might show like a red flag that this might be a question to discuss, at that meeting for that section.
I'm opposed to that.
You are.
I think send it to us. Send it to the planning board, not to Bailey. She's got enough on her plate. I don't want her streamlining this every day. That's just, no, I don't think
Well,
that's right.
that's something for Joe to discuss with his employee, so let's schedule a meeting. So our next, so for the next workshop, do you want a 6 o'clock time slot on a non-meeting Monday? Do Mondays work okay? Or do you want a 5 o'clock time slot and we'll get as much done as we can in the hour beforehand?
2-hour meeting dedicated to that.
Yeah,
And let's schedule 4 of them.
okay,
And that'll get everybody up to speed. If it doesn't, I'm very sorry, but we've experienced this for a long time. This room doesn't get filled up with the public. It could be a dire problem. And I think the press will agree. So we'll do our best, but let's be rational and reasonable about this, in my opinion. 4 meetings. If they don't come to any one of the 4 meetings, we try.
That's right.
all right.
You have
So,
one more question?
Yeah.
No, I was gonna wait till, it doesn't matter, it can be after you pick your time.
okay.
I was, yeah, pick your time first.
All right, well, we've got a quarterly meeting a week from today at Dallas Plantation. Do you want to keep it on Mondays? Is that easiest for the board for the sake of scheduling, or do Tuesdays work
It's
okay?
easiest for me. I can't speak for everybody else. I'm the one that still has a high school kid. Cool.
Did you say they were good or bad? Tuesdays?
Tuesdays or Mondays are best because there's no sporting events, there's nothing to do with
Let's pick
school
them,
or
go,
anything.
get it done.
But you don't have to case it around me, I just might miss one.
I think if we wait for the next Monday, it's October 18th, because we have Columbus Day, October 11th, so maybe we're better off looking at a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I mean, you usually don't have games on Wednesdays.
Like I said, you don't have to base it on me, there's
Okay.
5 of us here and I'm not changing everything by being here. Can't make them all. So do what's best for the board and everybody else.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I make a recommendation, we do 11, 15, this is October, November, 13 December, and see where we set and schedule the 4th one after that if need be.
11th is a holiday, it's Columbus Day.
Oh, yeah, it does say that. So 18th. That's our meeting day.
That's our meeting,
And the 4th is our meeting.
Okay, let's do,
like this.
what's the blue?
Airport,
What's this one here? Planning?
that's planning board.
Planning board. Be a perfect night to do it there, the first one. And then 14, and then 13. I don't care anywhere in here, but I recommend 14 and 13 for December. And whatever week, 14, 13, whatever there, that week.
So, suggesting our first meeting be Thursday, October 14th. How's that, folks?
Thursdays I can't do, sorry.
Okay.
I guess I should have chimed that one in. Thursdays I am dedicated to the church,
Okay.
extra meetings and everything else.
Okay,
Tuesday, the 19th,
Sorry.
Tuesday, the 19th,
October,
October 19th. From 6 to 8?
6 to 8. We good? I know we'll get one Tuesday, I'm sorry. I want you to,
We're good or we're not. I mean, not every one of us is gonna make these meetings. We're gonna throw docs out tonight. Everybody's gonna make it. It's just not gonna happen. So that's fine.
so 19?
Yeah.
14, excuse me,
15.
yeah, and 13.
November 15th.
Did you say November 15th?
Yes,
That's one of our regular meetings, isn't it?
is it?
No, November.
First and third Monday, so November 1st and November 15th.
Oh,
The first. Do we have a meeting on the 1st? Yep, it is.
So it'll be the one
Oh,
before
22
him.
then, 22. You're right, 22.
That,
I'll get the 13th then, I'm still struggling for that date.
Do that one right?
So 10, 19, 11, 22, and what was the third one?
December 15th.
December 13th.
I just want to make sure we're saying a Tuesday, a Monday, and a Monday.
Uh-huh.
I'll give you the dates in a second, when I'll.
Tuesday, a Monday, and a Monday.
Got it?
Yep.
You good with that?
I'll look it up, yeah. Just gotta remember.
Cindy, we're calling these workshops, not public hearings.
That's right, they're workshops.
At what time?
6 o'clock.
6 to 8 p.m.
We'll give enough notice.
We gotta get it done before budget.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a lot of time.
Okay.
I know it sounds like June's a long ways off, but so much in between.
All right. Yes, Mark.
So what I was gonna suggest, I'll just put up for discussion was, after these workshops, if you've got them broken down into 2 or 3 sections of the chapter 38, that if you put a public comment period with, for so many days after each of those meetings, it seemed like it would create some urgency in people to respond to you, so that you wouldn't have to keep revisiting. And then, the next meeting, when you have 2 or 3 sections, after that public comment period is over, you just keep moving ahead, and then you can keep stacking them up behind you. I don't know. That's
We
a
can,
reasonable suggestion or not, but
I'm not sure how public comment would be handled.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly wouldn't be allowed on Facebook.
Written.
We can discuss that at a future meeting.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on from chapter 38 at a snail's pace here. Dangerous building. So Joe is suggesting that we schedule that public hearing for November 1st at 6 p.m.
So moved.
All right, so this is a public hearing, so Steve's motion to schedule a public hearing for what's the address, 124 Cary Road. Do I have a second?
Second.
And Ethan seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
what was the date again?
That was November 1st.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I didn't catch the motion on the chapter 38. Sorry to bring that back up.
yeah, no, I'm not sure there was a formal motion, so do you want one, Joe, a motion indicating we are scheduling 4 or 3 future public workshops.
Please, because the
Okay.
board, the forum of the board will be in session.
Okay, so Steve, do you mind putting that in a motion?
I don't mind at all. Madam Chair, I move we schedule 3 public hearings with a
No.
possible,
Workshops.
3 public workshop with a possible 4th one. Dates are 10/19, 11/22, and 12/13, from 6 to 8 p.m. to discuss chapter 38.
Steve's motion
Second.
and Ethan seconds. All those in favor? Oh, that's unanimous. All right, moving on to the general assistance ordinance and appendices. So Tracy wrote us a wonderful summary memo indicating the changes and also that we need 2 separate motions. One to adopt the general assistance ordinance as presented, and I think we follow the municipal association's lead on that.
I move the general assistance program as amended, changed, whatever. It's adopted, correct?
Okay, so that's Steve's motion to approve the general assistance ordinance. Do I have a second?
Second.
And Ethan seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Next is a motion for the appendices.
I move the appendices as presented to general assistance.
All right, thank you, Steve. Steve's motion. Ethan seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Next, we have a liquor license presented by Moose Alley Operations LLC. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the liquor license for Moose Alley Operations LLC as presented.
Shelley's motion and Ethna seconds. Comments, questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Next, we have a couple of Country Club Road plowing. What's that?
And just, can you just tell them that they don't need to put the dollar amounts on the application when they submit it?
We can tell them, I mean, that's my fault. I should-
Or just white them out when it's presented.
So that's 100% on me.
That's it.
All right, we have got license for winter maintenance. This is an annual procedure we go through with the Jamesons regarding, the plow being able to turn around on their private property.
Madam Chair, I move license for winter maintenance for the Jamesons.
Steve's motion
Second.
and Ethan seconds.
One thing for discussion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I mistaken? I thought they sold that property.
That's the reason for the second one, I think.
No, the second one is, excuse me,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The second one is for Chodosh. That's the name
Oh,
of the
yeah.
property.
Yeah.
So,
It's
It's sold the house.
Okay.
the other thing of it is this is dated prior to their closing date. Yeah, good question, though. Yep, Shelley?
So we have to have a new one when the new owners take, because isn't it so we can drive through there, so we don't have to go around, so we're actually plowing their road for them as well.
Yeah,
That's the way it works, yeah.
it's for the town's convenience, yes.
It is, and technically, I wasn't aware of any of this pending information. Technically, because it's a license, the license is in the name of a person. So probably there is a new owner that would require a license. But I certainly would recommend, if this is past practice, which I know it is, I would recommend going through this. If a new owner presents themselves,
Okay,
have a new license. If not, then just run through to the ring.
all right. Yeah, Keith?
I think Ethan's correct. The plans are with a new owner for the motel.
They haven't taken it over yet. So the application is in, and if they change over when they say they're going to. But the Jamesons still own their house and a good sizable chunk of the property. I'm speaking a little, I'm sorry.
I just trying to figure out that. I never seen all the plans for these guys to design a new motel, so I'm trying to figure out how they ownership of their still design. It's what it is. Just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, we can reach out to the Jamesons and see if they've made the new owners aware. But let's follow through with this current executed document, in which we've got a motion and a second for the Jameson. Yes, Shelley?
Oh, no, I'm going to.
Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. The license for winter maintenance for the Mingo Holding Company. Do I have a motion? Go ahead.
Well, I'm looking for, what is the name of, so it's Mingo Holding Company, right? Because,
Jonathan showed those.
for John, the,
He's the property owner and the signs. I agree.
so I make a motion to accept the license for winter maintenance with the town with Mingo Holding Company.
Shelley's motion.
Second.
And Steve seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Overlook sidewalk amendment number 2, $30,000 increase. I will bounce this one over to Keith and Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the last meeting, I brought this topic up. The question from the board was if it's eligible for the 75-25 split. I confirmed that with our engineer. The answer is yes. I verified that, and I still support this increased effort on our resident inspector's part. So,
Mark?
Question for Joe, was that okay? So I'm just curious, so with the engineering contract, this was a flexible item? This wasn't part of their bid? Yeah, this was like a cost plus section?
exactly.
Okay, yeah, well, that's the way it's.
So originally,
And I was just wondering if I understood.
that's correct. Originally, we were expecting it to take less time, less hours, and it turned into longer days and I think 3 extra weeks, 2 or 3 extra weeks. So as I noted in the last meeting, and I still believe this, because I've had the LAP training, it's very important that we document quantities, conditions, so forth. It's money well spent.
I believe in that 100%. I was just wondering about the contract part of it with the engineer that, so if it took another 3 weeks, it could be been more. The longer it takes, the more it's gonna cost to the resident supervisor.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Joe? He is looking for a motion. Yes, go ahead, Shelley.
So it says that they're capped off at 525,785. And I thought I saw on the construction we're at 523, is that? So we're within the parameters of their 5%. I mean, they're 95% to the $30,000 bill. That makes sense.
75%. What's that?
75, sorry.
Yeah.
So the total to date for Rangeley Overlook sidewalk, this was prepared September 2nd. Total to date, $803,648.87. That includes the $30,000 that we're discussing now. So the net town share would be $277,863. We budgeted $330,000 for that.
So we're under the cap, to answer the question.
Thank you, Joe. Any other questions? So, need a motion to approve the town manager to sign amendment number 2 of the agreement between the town of Rangeley and Wright Pierce for the $30,000 increase.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve amendment number 2 to allow town manager to pay Wright Pierce the $30,000 extra inspection fee.
Second.
Ethan's motion and Steve seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. All right, Moonlight Paving, request for changes. Joe?
Madam Chair, 2 things for the board. First of all, on your table is an example change order. This was not in your packets. I distributed it to you this evening. That was put together by Rick Dunn. He's the engineer from Mainland. He is magically appeared on the screen there. Hi, Rick. Good evening, sir. He's here to talk with us tonight about a topic we left off on at the last meeting, which was delaying the surface pavement on Loon Lake Road. So since last time we've met, Keith and I and Rebecca have met with, over the phone, with Mark Hume from the Maine DOT, make sure he was okay with this approach. He said he was fine with it. We're buttoning up to the paperwork, as Rick knows. Rick responded to part of that today. Thank you for doing that. We've also talked with Northern Borders grant folks, and they're okay. We actually, they didn't have to okay it because our extension goes, our grant goes to September 30th, 2022. So Mark Hume has verbally authorized the extension of the NPI to July 31 of 2022. The question now becomes, and what I really want Rick to help us talk about tonight is what would the change order look like? You have the example there. And what happens if we delay payment? So Rick, there was a long-winded introduction, but if you don't mind, take it from there.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and thank you, board, for having me. I think I'm going to operate under the assumption that you've seen the letter that I prepared for the previous meeting, or maybe this is the first time. This is the first meeting that you're seeing it, but essentially there are some pros and cons to extending the pavement schedule out to the spring. The main con, I think, is the variable nature of cost of paving. So what happens in the spring versus this fall to liquid asphalt prices, and who bears the risk of the potential change in that asphalt price? So we can come back to that in a second. The pros basically to extending the major ones are that we'll have a winter to run on base pavement. So we'll have the opportunity to see how the road's performing after the contractor's gotten base pavement installed. And really they will have wrapped up most of the work by then. But if there are any trouble spots or any little drainage blips, we'll be able to see those perform over a winter and then be able to correct for that without having a surface pavement that's patched if that pavement is put off to the spring. The other kind of pro to putting off to the spring is basically you avoid kind of the scramble that everyone ends up being in the fall of fighting over pavement contractors, who's going to get paved and when. And as we know in Rangeley, the paving season is even that much shorter, and so you end up fighting weather and temperature days basically for paving as you get closer to the deadline. So it's certainly helpful for the contractor in that respect. It's also good for the project in that we don't end up having to make compromising decisions. Temperature ranges that are right on the border. They're allowable by spec, but where it's right on the edge. So those are kind of the pros. I wanted to give you some context to the variability of pricing. And essentially what I'm sure you guys have heard this term, but it's we would build in an escalator to the contract via change order. And so that's the change order that Joe gave to you folks, or I guess the template one or the example one explains that there'd be an pavement escalator built in for the spring pavement. And so what that essentially means is that we take the price of liquid asphalt at the time of the bid or the contract for this job, and then we look at the liquid asphalt price in the spring as of when they're planning to pave, and we take the difference of those liquid asphalt prices and we put them into a formula for basically pavement is made up of 5 to 8% of liquid asphalt, and then the rest is aggregate and other pieces. And so you multiply that change in liquid asphalt price by the amount of liquid asphalt in your paving mix, and then also the tonnage that's presumed for your job, and that will come out to a difference in paving price, whether the liquid asphalt price goes down or whether it goes up. And most of the time it goes up because inflation. Though there have been some oddball times when oil took a dive in it, and liquid asphalt follows the price of oil. So back to context, we got feedback from the contractor's sub on paving, and their words were for next year it would be anywhere between 3,000 and 6,000 at the very most. And I'm just quoting an email from them. So that was submitted from Kevin Vining, and that was forwarded on from their subcontractor. So it gives you some perspective to what is potentially at risk for pushing the pavement off to the spring. There could be an add to the job in that 3,000 to 6,000 range.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.
So that becomes the question, Madam Chair. Does the board feel it's worth the risk for that 3,000 to 6,000 range to wait until spring to pay? The biggest variable, in talking with Keith on this, is the weather, and Rick highlighted it too. It could change quickly. So if we don't have the surface paved by the middle of October, it's really kind of a challenge to find the day that, and it would be, the way the contract's written now, it's the contractor's challenge to find those days. I don't want to lead you in the wrong direction. The contract says they'll pave it all at once. I think it makes sense. I really do think it makes sense for the town to delay the surface paving. That's why Keith and I brought it to you. But I didn't want to mislead you and have you think that there was no risk to it financially. It could be $3,000 to $6,000 based on what the sub has sent us. It could be no change.
Yeah, even.
Well, we delay the payment and Kevin bought it and eats the $6,000 if it goes up. Because it's September 20th, but I didn't wait to dig up the road.
Shelley?
Does that mean it doesn't even have the forgive me code on it? I call it the forgive me code. It will have the,
Yeah, so, yeah.
so it's gonna be the way it is right now.
No, we'll have so what we're asking at this point is to delay service payment. So Kevin will finish ripping up the current pavement, bringing the road to the new width, new grade. He'll put down the first coat of pavement, and we'll leave it till next year. So that if there are any imperfections or issues, engineering, or I say engineering, but construction wise, excuse me, that way we can dig up the road, patch in that base pavement, and then come back with one overall coat and make it all look good. Now again, it's a risk. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen historically through contractors. Hey, liquid asphalt's cheaper in the spring. Historically. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but again, it's a risk, it's a gamble.
Shelley?
Have you checked out the incline that Chrissy Stewart has to have in front of her house? The water's gonna run right into her living room.
Different discussion.
Okay.
Pavement first, obviously, and that's been addressed, ours been addressed with being worked on.
Steve?
You know, these discussions are difficult for me because every time somebody applies to these jobs, they happen to be one of my friends. But I remember asking, how are we coming with the Loon Lake Road project? Well, we're running a little bit behind because another project took precedent. And now we're faced with us being the recipient of a bad circumstance, maybe, poor timing, whatever. However, I want that road to be done and done correctly. And I guess we're gonna have to lean on you and Keith, Joe and Keith and this gentleman here, but I don't know why we gotta make the difference up here. I'm sorry, I have a strong problem with that. And if it was Scotty and Joe sitting here, I'd tell them the same damn thing. I have no compunction with that. It bothers me that they're my friends. Kevin's my friend, but when I make a mistake in my business, I gotta eat it.
Any other comments from the board before I go to Mark? Mark?
I'm not clear what is the surface going to be the base layer of pavement, or is it going to be that reclaimed material that's being substituted for the Class A gravel?
So Madam Chair, what we're proposing is that the contractor will pave the base mix this fall, and then a surface mix on top of that next spring.
So there is going to be some pavement there, it's just not the reclaimed material.
Yes, you're gonna have subgrade, reclaim, base paper.
Yeah.
And then next year, surface paper.
You think it's gonna hold?
I absolutely do. I wholeheartedly stand behind any contractor. I think if you use what I've seen so far, through my inspections up there, working with Rick, if, with the 20+ inches of new gravel, the 4 inches of reclaim and that base pavement, it's gonna stick. I would get nervous with surface. I think, it's a gamble for Kevin, or it's a gamble for whoever, road quality wise, but don't get enough temperature range and that pavement gets laid down, and we're ripping it up anyway. I say we, but it comes out of the town's pocket a lot of times.
Yes, Edna?
I think I'm simply just gonna kind of chime in and make it a majority here that while I wholeheartedly believe in waiting, I really do, based on the conversation that we're having and what time of year it is, I wholeheartedly believe in waiting. I do not believe that this should be a cost burden for us. This is on the contractor, that we are this late into this project.
No. Yeah, make no mistake, Keith, everything that you're saying makes sense. We've historically, when contractors have, I'll use this term, screwed up, waited too long, whatever they've done, and it gets too cold, we throw a base layer down. We did it with Allen Street, we did it with the park, I think. We'll let it settle for the winter, we'll pave it again next spring. I don't have any problem with that if they can't get around to it, but as after Steve said, I'm not the one that didn't get around to it. So you gotta wait till spring, and it's gonna be a great paving job, that's great. Don't send us a bill for $6,000 or whatever it might be.
Yes, Keith?
So don't disagree with any of you, but I will tell you is Joe Earl and I have actually been in talks. Part of our limitation right now is, and Steve made a good mention of this, is Rangeley often gets for the back burner, many projects, generally paving. What happens is most contractors, generally paving outfits, state takes priority, takes precedence. And that's how it's been since I've been here. Part of our dilemma in Rangeley is we have no language within our ordinance or code that penalizes any contractor that we come into contract with. So our hopes is to put forward a lot of the state's language into our code or ordinance, town policy, and have obviously get it adopted or voted on, that then would apply those penalties and contract that, I say deadlines, but already deadlines are already in place, but penalties that would, if you default on paving at X date, then becomes a financial burden on the company at that point. So right now we have very little grit behind, other than voting into the change. But in the future, I think we have the ability with some language to really help have a higher pedestal into where we fall. Project.
Steve?
He brings up a good point. I didn't realize, Keith, that we needed an ordinance. I thought this was policy when we write contracts. We could put in a contract, anything in this town. I didn't realize we needed an ordinance. If that's the case, great point. I just don't think it is. But I'm saying if it is, then you're right. We got to get this changed. I know in other contracts we've had with federal governments and DOT and whatnot, there have been penalties for non-compliance.
I think,
Like,
I think what,
I was gonna say, Rick's got his hand up.
yeah, we'll get to, if I could just take a stab at that. What we talked about, I agree. This is a contract, potentially a contract issue that we're talking about. The town has the right to write contracts and enter into contracts. What Keith and I have talked about is possibly the road construction standards, putting something in there about when paving will take place, temperatures, like basically the DOT spec, putting that into the road construction ordinance. That's the conversation we're gonna have.
Well, I think you've been present in some of the construction meetings we've had here. When I've sat, not at this table, and said, are you more testing tar depths? I didn't see that. And I know he's chomping at the bit over here to chime in. I'm not trying to make this difficult. I truly am not. But you know what? It's got to be said once in a while, so we get it in the queue for the future.
John?
One last question, Rick, before I ask Madam Chair and go to you. Keith and Rick, did this conversation begin life as a timing issue with the contractor? Did it begin life as wanting to delay pavement for all the purposes we talked about, basically let the frost settle and so forth? I think now that we're in late September, it is naturally a timing issue. Did it begin life as that in construction?
I can say right now, Earl and I have always been in favor of holding off a year for any surface pavement in the end of any project, just for that allowance of having a nice finished product. So if there is any kind of interruption to the project, it allows you to correct that and then have a complete surface field coat.
Yeah.
But yes, that was discussed prior to any kind of conflict with deadline of contract. So I will say that absolutely.
Rick, you got something to add?
Yeah, so I had a couple of notes, and the first was that I haven't been able to pull it up on my other screen here, but there are liquidated damages associated with this contract. So they're based on not paving specific, but contract end dates. So if the contractor goes over it goes over the contracted date, then there are penalties. So that's built into this particular contract. And I want to go back and say that I didn't mean to imply that the only option was to approve this or disapprove this extension to the spring with the escalator. And so that's to say that there are two sort of components to a change order of shifting pavement to the spring, and that's cost and contract time. Contract time comes with its own pieces. Meaning that for whatever reason, this board may decide, no, we want to have the project done because it needs to be done before X date, and that's a holiday, let's say, or there are things that are beyond my scope to consider with the board. So what we're hoping for, I think, and this is not to put words in Joe's mouth, but for an acknowledgement from the board on whether it's okay to extend contract date if it's a zero cost change to the town, or is it okay to have the escalator built in and that risk? And so what I think I'm hearing from most of the board is we understand that there might be some pros for extending, but generally not in favor of the risk of cost being put on to the town. And so we can shape a change order. It's a negotiation between the town and the contractor. So we can build it the way that everyone sees fit, but both parties have to agree. So we can go back to the contractor and say, hey, you can put paving off to the spring, but the board has not accepted the potential price increase. That's an option. And so I just wanted to highlight that for you members that, we're kind of in the driver's seat as far as what that change order ends up looking like.
Yeah.
Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. You all just got finished telling us a little bit ago that they want to ship this to the spring because you don't feel it'll be a good product if we take a chance with the weather. Is that correct? Well, changing the end date doesn't resolve that unless we have good weather. Weather coming into the front of this thing and before the end date, and we've allowed them to pave after that, we don't have a good product, so we shouldn't have something afoot.
Yeah, so my apologies that when I speak about the end date, that's what we call the final completion date. And so those penalties are tied to that final completion. And so what we'd be talking about is shifting the final completion date of this project from where it is now currently, which I think is October 30th, and shift it off to the spring to allow the contract to extend. So it's not the paving deadline that we'd be talking about extending, it'd be contract date.
That's different. Can we be assured though, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, can we be assured though that we have that initial paving done by October 30th so that we have something to plow that's suitable this winter and we have a bonding agent and such? That all we're really shifting in terms of the completion date is the final tar?
Yes, yep, we can write that into the change order. The details of that we can be specific about.
Does that make some sense, Jim? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I think earlier.
What's that?
I said the state cuts off on October 15th, so.
Yeah.
For payment, so I'd like to go.
We need to hear that. I mean, I thought we just agreed to the 30th, so, yeah.
Again, the state, most roads states 15th, there's some roads right now that's September 30th. So we're coming there like, so Kevin was commenting that he would have it by October 15th, so I'd like to hold that deadline still, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's really an obstacle for that thing.
So right now, the contract dates, I think substantial completion, which is basically all the bulk of the work. I want to say is September 30th, and then final completion is October 30th. And so that gives the contractor basically a month long to deal with punch list items after we go through and have a walkthrough, take a look at the job and make sure it's completed to everyone's satisfaction. So that last month is really just odds and ends, or should be odds and ends. And substantial completion, I know there's a bunch of these terminologies, but that's the one where paving really ought to be done by under the current contract.
Correct.
So what do you need for action from the board?
Good question. To approve, and Rick, help me out with the language of this here. So approve the contract end date, or approve delaying contract end date, correct? Until what, Rick? June 30th, May 30th?
Yeah, I think built the final completion in as June 30th in the change order that you have in front of you. I think we'd probably just want to confirm it with Vining to make sure that that's an acceptable spring paving deadline. Seems to me like it ought to be, but.
And then the second part, based on what we've heard from the board, the second part would be pending no cost change, right?
Yeah, I think we'd go back to the contractor. Again, change orders are negotiated between town and contractor. Both parties have to agree. So we would stick with the current contract dates, everything as is as far as surface pavement is concerned, unless everyone can agree on an acceptable condition for the surface pavement. And I guess what we're hearing from the board is that the cost, it ought to be a no cost change. Yeah, so we draft that change order. If agreed to by Vining, we'd allow the change in contract dates, but not the change in contract cost for the paving item.
So if the board authorized me to negotiate that with Vining, I would do that for you.
So moved.
Second.
Steve motions, Ethan seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, folks.
All right.
Thank you.
ARPA funds, authorized town manager to sign. American Rescue Plans. So basically, we need a motion to authorize Joe to sign.
There are terms and conditions, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Grant assurances, award terms and conditions. There's an electronic grant portal for this that I finally was able to log into the state. Subbed out this work to a company called Horn LLP. And everybody in the state thought it was a spam email. And finally, somebody brought it to my attention and said, oh, that's how you get into this program. So when you get in there, like almost any federal government or state government money that you apply for, there are grant assurances, terms and conditions, which I shared with you. These are pretty standard. And just in case anybody's wondering, the total amount of this in the portal is listed as $121,986.4. That's the total amount of ARPA funds. 121,986.24.
Any questions for Joe? Not, we need a motion to authorize the town manager to sign.
Second.
I guess it's my motion. We're just gonna roll with it. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Shelley.
Do you know what we're spending on here?
We don't. That's actually a very good question. I'm glad you brought that up. What has been recommended by some wise folks is to get the money, put it in general, put it in an account of your choosing, which I recommend general reserve. Put it in there. We can earn interest on this. The interest can go anywhere. But if we get our hands on it, we can then continue to deliberate about how we wish to spend it. So you don't need to know ahead of time.
Okay. But it has to be-
Once you get it, obviously you can always use it for approved uses.
But it has to be for certain things.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Any other questions for Joe? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Who was the second on that?
Ethan, yeah.
Thank you.
Moving on to salary survey towns. So Annalee has suggested some comparable towns to consider in comparison for the town of Rangeley. And I think the board's got some opinion on this, so anyone, Shelley?
I think Cumberland and York are out. We can't compete with their prices and stuff. I mean, just looking at, okay, let's see. Cape Elizabeth, let's do Cumberland first.
There's no Cumberland, it's Camden.
So Bridgeton, 15, their commitment's 15 million. Cape Elizabeth is 34 million. And we're at 7.
So I think, what else? The thing of it is, I mean, if you're going to compare towns that have 3 times our budget, well, that means they have more town employees. The supervisors actually supervise many, many people. And so I think, I mean, in looking at it, I think the town's, the town's budget ought to be taken into consideration as well, as far as a comp. What other comments do board members have?
I'm just surprised Gumco has less than 900 people in population that I didn't know.
In the wintertime.
In the
In
wintertime.
the summer, it's
Yeah.
about
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I get that.
Mhm.
I'm still surprised.
But in that regard, I think it could be.
But they're
reasonable.
11.6 million.
They're-
Is they're committed.
So does she, is Annalee looking for feedback from the board as to what should be struck from the comp list for salary surveys?
Possibly, I think, she's with us tonight, Madam Chair,
Okay.
she's in the Zoom room. Full disclosure, the top portion of this was something Annalee had prepared for the town a number of years ago. The bottom 7 are towns that I introduced to this for conversation's sake. Basically because they're waterfront and they are kind of tourist destinations. But you bring up good points about, how do we make sure that they actually reflect, what we're doing here. And Rangeley's quite unique. So Annalee is here. She and I are working on, one of the things that she and I are working on is the salary survey. As you know, our policy that we talked about last year on the budget process relies on salary survey as a component of merit increases, which is why we're putting the effort into this at this point. We want to make sure that we're ready in December to have that component in the process. So Annalee is all ears. She's looking for feedback, as am I. Any comments, Annalee, on that?
Oh, am I in the meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Welcome, Annalee.
Thank you. So let me just say to you that the towns that are listed that have salaries for the manager was done in 2017. And I provided those to Joe to give him an example of what the selectmen agreed to or chose for the towns the last time we did a salary study. And then I heard Joe tell you about the bottom ones that doesn't have that information were added, I think by Jill and the staff. So I have no particular recommendation. I think you have to choose those towns that you feel best represent you. When we chose the towns before, we did it somewhat by population, and we looked at towns that had a large growth of a population because they were a tourist town or they were a 2 or 3 season recreational town. And that was some of the things that were looked at.
I struggle with oceanfront towns.
Thank you.
It's really not apples to apples. I mean, we've got, Bridgeton is a lake at, they've got a ski mountain, they've got a lake, as does Bethel. Belgrade, might be another comparable town, but these oceanfront towns, I don't, and the grumblings of the board, there seems to be a majority grumbling agreement.
I'm sorry to grumble. I'll tell you though, I really find it difficult to make qualified comparisons if we don't look at town evaluations inland, never mind the coast. This is not apples to apples. I don't care what coastal town you're talking about.
Right.
The influx of travel and tourism on the coast far exceeds what we see here in Rangeley. So we need to pick towns with like-sized budgets, towns that have like-sized fluctuations in travel and tourism or whatever the influx is for residency, and also mean income. We got to look at that.
Right.
So those are my problems.
What was that last thing you said, Steve? I was trying to take some notes. Income?
Yes. Yep. I just think, Annalee, that a lot of these towns give us some information that's not applicable or even correlate for what we have here in Rangeley.
I mean,
So
Yeah,
I mentioned a
I
couple
don't disagree with you.
talked about this. Greenville, Jackman, Belgrade is a very good example. And I know there's others out there that are escaping, but I didn't want to waste my time with Camden.
Yeah,
Quit.
Keith?
I have no problem with the conversation. I'm just clarification, if these were used in 2017, what were they used for?
I think the former town manager at the time had reached out to Annalee,
I can answer that.
yeah, go ahead.
I think this helps us in our union negotiations. I think this helps us in employee search phases. This helps us talk about what comparable positions are, yours, Bailey's, everybody's. It just helps this board and any governing agency look where we are in the marketplace.
Keith asked why.
So, yeah, what was the 2017 list, the top half of this list, what was it compiled for? Was it used for anything? Because you didn't.
I don't think it was used for,
There's just a line, so I guess my whole point to this is, I'm not opposed to looking at similar towns. I don't disagree with the idea of Belgrade and places like that, but if this list was used prior for something else, then this whole past practice thing has to come back into play. This, I'm not arguing my salary or anything like that, I'm just saying, if it was good once, it's gonna be argued by other people.
yeah.
That it's good again, that it
This-
should be good again.
This wasn't anything that the Board of Selectmen used. Like I said, it was a former town manager that reached out to Annalee. I believe it was Mr. Pellerin. And
I saw like I set myself up as a failure, not failure, I set myself up for,
We're not, though, we're asking for a new one. We're asking
well,
for
right,
a
but
new one.
yeah,
Right.
So we're not setting ourselves up for anything. There is no precedent set. We are asking for a new, honest look at salary surveys for this area, not for coastal towns. We aren't a coastal town.
I don't disagree, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, no, and I completely understand where you're coming from, Keith. I absolutely do. But there is no precedent set by any
It's just
salary
always a
survey.
conversation here where we reinvent the wheel again, and then somebody comes back to get pissed off about, well, you use this, not, again, maybe you didn't use this, but if you use this at one time, here we go with a whole new list of things, and it's fair for a new group, but not to the group before, or et cetera, et cetera. We're always looking at,
Yeah.
I can't even think right now what I want to say, but
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get angry, I'm not trying to be disruptive or anything like that, I'm just trying to prove a point here, I guess.
I hear what you're saying.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I think last time in 2017, when they did that, we were doing like job descriptions. And then it was just basically trying to figure out exactly when, if we're still in the parameters. I mean, that's just what was done at that point. But it wasn't anything where it made a decision on what someone was getting paid. It wasn't that type of survey where this is what we're looking to do now, just to find out what's out there in the market, so we can compare apples to apples. And we want to make sure that apples to apples are within the servicing area.
Joe?
So I'm wondering if we shouldn't begin with the list of towns, rather we should begin with the list of criteria that we're looking at. What do you think of that? Tax commitment, population, summer tourism.
Yeah.
And if some of those towns happen to be on the coast, then I think you, at that point, would probably consider those to be acceptable because you used the criteria. Annalee, do you have any thoughts on that? Instead of starting with the list of towns, starting with the list of criteria?
I think criteria is valuable. And I think the purpose of doing this was to, because it's required in your policies for merit increases. Isn't that not correct?
It is, but the policy does not spell out the methodology of the board.
Oh, no, not at all. And when I did this before, there was other things besides salary. I asked about insurance, retirement plans, pensions, what other positions they held besides town manager, because some of those town managers have 4 or 5 positions. So there was more information. I only sent this to have a working document for Joe to start with. And I wouldn't be worried about it set any kind of precedent at all. I don't think you're bound to use the same towns every time. But there should be criteria,
Okay.
for sure.
All right, so far, yes, Bailey?
I just a thought about a criteria, if we're talking about doing criteria, we have many jobs in this town where people are wearing many hats, multiple hats. And it's hard to compare jobs with other towns when individual person is holding multiple jobs where other towns have those separated into different people. So I think that's something that really needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, and we've discussed that because this isn't going to be an easy process at all. I mean, because each, you can go on a town's website and, yeah, I mean, the town manager may also be the treasurer or it's, each town customizes to their needs. And so that's definitely a good point. Agree 100%.
That's what made this a little more complicated because some of these town managers wore a lot of hats compared to Rangeley, and some wore very few.
Mm-hmm. So we have, we've mentioned so far population, tax, the overall budget, which includes school, correct? School, county tax, it's the whole shebang. Population.
It's a commitment. And also the report.
You have to speak up, Shelley.
So I have the 2019 municipal valuation return statistical summary. It's certified ratio, commitment, tax rate, land and building valuations. And you get the whole state of Maine.
Would another criteria, Madam Chair, be services, level of services? So Rangeley is quite unique. They have a
Right.
Wastewater system, an
Right.
airport, parks and rec, all these things that people have to manage and supervise and budget for and so forth. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, the services are factored into that too.
Absolutely. I mean,
Oh, definitely.
police department, not all
That's right.
towns have police departments.
Right.
So Freiburg might be one to look at as well. They've got a PD. They're in a lake-ish area close to ski resorts. It's the next town over from Bridgeton.
So
Yes.
I sense that there's some animosity towards this, and I just want to be clear about my thoughts on this, Keith and others. This is a tool, nothing more. A baseline starting point, nothing more. Because in the town manager's search, which included a lot of this discussion with Annalee and candidates and whatnot, we had to compare candidates that had an expectation of this amount of money and others that had expectations of this amount of money and every point in between. And we had the same discussion as we look for a mechanic. How do we approach this thing so that we can attract for the proper candidate? This is just a tool, in my opinion, but we need to use the tool and get the accurate information once we put all the criterion together. Again, mean income, travel and tourism, services rendered that this community has, geography, how much land mass we're taking care of. We're an island. This is exemplified by our educational system where we're busing people 49 miles one way every day. So Rangeley is unique. There are others that are similar to that. Just like to see where they are.
Yeah.
It should not reflect on what positions look like today for you all. And I just and I think it's important that you understand my point of view on this, because I don't want you to feel threatened by any of this.
Yes, Keith.
So it's my overall thought now that I can a little bit clearer. It's just nice to have one tool, a light tool, rather than reinventing the tool. Have one tool, because Rangeley is Rangeley. We are unique. We always have been unique. We are growing, but the tools need to change. So I mean, just as if you guys eventually can come to one tool and we can look at that criteria list, then it helps us move forward in that, whether it's salary, whatever we do. We're looking at positions, we're looking at rate of pay, we're looking at needs, whatever we want, it just applies to that same tool. Because this tool's been evolved, it has to evolve obviously, but it's been looked at and changed and questioned.
I don't think it's been changed or questioned. I mean, I've been on the board for 8 years and it's been discussed. This is the first time a salary survey is being done this comprehensively. So
Maybe I'm not-
For us,
for
us.
the board, I mean, maybe, you know,
I mean, MMA does one annually, let's be
Yeah.
honest, they change theirs every year. There's an annual salary survey done by MMA every year. It changes, it evolves,
well, and
but
it
this
depends
is
on,
for us. This one is for Rangeley, with the intent to make sure that we are paying our people the appropriate wages for what they do, because you guys do a lot.
well, and the MMA salary survey is subject to who's willing to submit the information, and then you don't know how complex the job is, how many people they supervise, how many hats they wear. So, I mean, we've discussed the MMA salary survey in the past, but I think we just found it's just too shallow. I mean, you guys, like I said, Rangeley's complex. So, Bailey.
I don't know exactly the point that Keith is trying to make, but I feel like the idea that this is the first time that we're using a salary survey is kind of the point. That other things have been used in the past, and multiple different types of things have been used in the past, and now we're going to this salary survey. And if we're choosing to do a salary survey now, if you're choosing to do a salary survey now, that needs to be continued in the future. And we stick to that same idea across the town, whether like salary survey or other ideas of what the town needs to do, still staying to the same idea of looking across the board at these towns in the same type of way, rather than finding a different way of looking at them in the future again.
Yeah, thank you. All right, anything else, any other comments? All right, so, we've discussed the multi-faceted, approach to look at, and if there are any questions, just let us know in the future.
So I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Annalee.
Okay, so all of the criteria that you've listed is available. And so you may have a small town with high valuation and a large town with low valuation. So is there a priority in terms of which towns to use? And if you want to use population, which I recommend you do, is one of them, what's your range of population that you want to look at? What's the lowest that you think that you want to look at? What would be the highest population that you think is comparable?
1,400 to 10,000, because that's how we fluctuate.
I think 10,000 is too high. I mean, because the thing is, what you're looking at is the base population, and that's, you know, the towns with 10,000 full-time residents are.
No, because they're part of the criterion. In all honesty, can we build the criterion and then have the discussion? We'll give you some suggestions, because my feeling on population, our services handle up to 10 to 15,000 people. We have built our service base, our fire department, to handle all the buildings that are here and the geographic area that we cover, thinking that somebody will be at said building, whether they are a resident or not. So our population fluctuations encompasses other components of our service structure, ambulance, fire, police. There was a day when there was the same amount of people here where we had a constable. You probably don't remember that, but that's the truth. We just had a constable. His name was Ben Brackett. And our population, if you look back in that formula or the data we got not too long ago, that was when there were 50 more people than we have now. So the criterion has to be based upon the knowns that we have in terms of service and the increase in salary structure over the years that we have and those criteria. So I don't think that's a stretch to say 10,000 people.
Joe?
Madam Chair, would you like Annalee and I to work on this and put a framework together and bring it back to you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Perfect. But I have an idea, and I think Joe wrote it down as I did, to how to mesh some of these criteria together, and then we can talk to you about what the challenges might be
Sure.
in case adjustments have to be made.
Okay.
And should we look at also what our competition is in the area?
In Franklin
In
County.
the private sector, you mean, or it's,
No, for the town. I mean, I know each town is set up so differently.
Franklin County.
For Franklin County,
Okay, I'm sorry.
it's Franklin County is your biggest, I think, competitor for taking your employees, but they don't have hardly any of the positions that you have in the town. They don't have the treasurer's elected part-time. The clerk is maybe elected or appointed. It's really, really different. The sheriff is elected, not appointed. It's really hard. They don't have any public works, any sewer. They don't have an airport.
No, Italy, I think Shelley meant towns, other towns in
other
Franklin
towns
County.
in Franklin
Oh,
County.
I see. I'm sorry. I misunderstood that.
Carabasset Valley, Farmington,
Somerset.
Wilton.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're not all set up the way that the town is, but I think the one that's actually probably most set up like the town of Rangeley is Farmington. Because Wilton, they have a town manager. Rhonda does everything. Rhonda's the treasurer. Carabasset, you've got a part-time treasurer, not full-time, but I think they have 2 clerks that are in the office. But they do have a roads department, but with Carabasset, you just have to, because the mountain pays for so much. Like the mountain pays for all their PD, except the chief's position.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yep.
All right. All right, moving on. Correspondence, there is nothing. And old business correspondence from Mark Beauregard from our July 19th meeting that got bumped. Okay. Got some material within that section. All right, so this is, these are overall questions regarding the budget, regarding the discussion during the 2021 budget cycle where it was discovered that there was a raise for the fire chief. And I guess that's first on the list. And what we have here is a memo from Joe Roach. And one, he's attached materials that were shared during the spring 2021 budget session related to the fire department budget. Minutes are attached from the February 10th, 2020, item 5. Okay, no, that is, that's a whole other subject. So what's been attached are the meeting minutes from March 10th, 2020, where the Board of Selectmen vote in the fire department budget at $307,377, along with a number of other departments. We then, so this this budget process, we had the early part, pre-COVID, and then during COVID. So there was a little bit of a lapse. Town meeting was delayed until July. So then we jumped to the Board of Selectmen May 2020 public hearing on the proposed budget. And those meeting minutes show some changes to certain warrant articles. There is, and with the addition of EXA, which is that full-time firefighter position that folks wanted as a separate vote. We've got the custom budget report where we show 2 columns. This is dated May 1st, 2020. The initial, which is the, would be the town, the town manager's initial proposed budget. The elected budget line is Board of Selectmen. And in there you see the $68,000 for the fire chief salary under initial, and under the Board of Selectmen it's $53,486, which reflects that vote back in March. And there wasn't a vote to adopt that 68,000 in those minutes. And then we go to, let's see, so that last one was dated May 1st, 2020. We go to a May 5th, 2020 printout, which doesn't reflect the selectmen's budget. It reflects the initial budget. And that seems to be what was presented to the voters to vote on. Was the, not the selectmen's line, but the initial line. Did everyone follow that? And I think Ethna and Shelley, you both were on the budget committee at the time. I don't believe you supported the full-time firefighter position.
That is correct.
Yeah. And there doesn't seem to be a separate vote for the $68,000. Was that presented to you for public discussion?
No, we have that on our printout that we had, the original presentation.
So that seems to be the issue. Is the fact that the initial budget was presented and not the elected. Mark, I don't know if you followed the discussion.
Yeah, and of the 3 items I mentioned in my correspondence, this one was the most concerning to me because I know things aren't always as they appear. So what I'm doing is asking you to, because I'll tell you how they appear to me first, and then I'll go on with my question. So that's what, the way it appeared to me was that the elected budget for this department was the one that was publicly discussed and publicly voted on. And then when the came time for the selectmen to ratify what they had voted on for the warrant article, it wasn't the elected budget that was publicly discussed and voted on. It was initial one that hadn't been publicly. And to me, that's problematic, if that's in fact what turns out to be true. And like I say, things aren't always as they appear, but I was hoping that the selectmen would look into that and research what exactly happened and how it happened, and then provide an explanation for it, because I think if that is what happened, you want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And so that's what I'm asking you on that part. And if I can go on the other two parts, so that part's still unresolved with me. On the part about the, I noticed on the financials that the airport, in the airport budget, that the only wages that there were wages for the airport manager, that's a $3,900 amount. And then there was $2,200 for the airport commissions. And so during that period, the airport commission never met, and I knew that because I was on there. But, you know, so instead of there being just the airport manager's stipend of $3,900 taken out, it was a $6,100 amount. So how'd that come out of it? And since then, it's been explained to me that when the non-union employees were given a one-time lump sum raise, that for whatever reason, there was some type of wrong button hit or something like that, the finance directors, 2,200, roughly 2,200, which happens to be about the same amount as the cumulative sum of the airport commissioners thing, went into that account and then came back out as the finance director's raise. So, you know, just looking at the financials, it's pretty hard to figure that out. You know, I just knew it was a $2,200 roughly difference of more expense than there should have been in that. So I question that. And I guess I guess I'm satisfied with the explanation of how that extra $2,200 showed up on the cost side of that department. So that part's been resolved. And leading up to that was the $2,200 pay increase here, which was like 1/7 of the $15,000 that was recommended to be, well, see, I couldn't find them, and I still haven't found the $15,000 amount in any of my paperwork, but it was recommended that the money that was used for salary survey be, instead of being used for a salary survey, be used for employee raises. So I guess I had lost track of this one from 2017 that you were just discussing. So I guess you would spend some money on a salary survey in 2017. It looks like you must have budgeted some in 2019, but I couldn't find that amount anywhere. So that's why I was just wondering, because in the discussion, there wasn't any vote on a dollar amount. It just said the money that was going to be used for a salary survey be used for raises. And I'm hoping that some of you folks in your paperwork just have the $15,000. I'm just curious, you know, I couldn't see where that 15,000 came from. So that was my other question. And that's minor compared to the thing about the warrant article and the votes of the budget committee and stuff, you know. So that's everything in a nutshell. So if you happen to find some documentation of what that salary amount was that was to be divided up wages, that'd be nice to know. And if you don't, you don't. But on the other thing, I do want you to look into, you know, how and what happened with that warrant article thing and the selectmen's approval not being ending up in the warrant article that people voted on, which everyone should trust was the one that should have been. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
I know that the 15,000, John, it was his intent to do a salary survey. And I haven't looked to see what I have for documentation. And it didn't happen, and so it was carried through. I thought the salary survey amount was 8,000.
I think it was a smaller amount.
It was 8,000, and then the remaining 7,000 was available for him to use for merit raises. I may have that somewhere, and I can look and see. But that seems to be my recollection, just simply because it was discussed 2 years in a row. Steve, I don't know if you have another, because it didn't get done it didn't get done that year that he intended it to. And then it didn't get done the second year either. And so it had been, you know, carried forward and discussed, you know, for a couple of budget cycles. But the 8,000, 7,000 split seems to, that was the first thing that came into my mind. You know, and though this is, and this all came up in our 2021 budget discussions when we were trying to make numbers match. So it's information that was discovered within the last 3 months.
I'm not expecting an answer tonight. I just wanted to, I put that in writing and then just wanted to present my questions to you. So if we have a time frame you need to figure things out, I'm good with it.
All right, so I mean, I do have a little more information than what's in here. You know, it's what I do have. I kept all of this. I keep all the budget cycle information, and so what I did find was on this, like this, compare this page, with the two columns. I've got the whole handout, and it does indeed show that the initial line matches what was entered on our selectmen's warrant and not the elected amount, which we had voted in on March 10th of that year. So there's no question. I mean, that the information, yeah, I have, and so if anybody have thoughts or comments or questions? Yep, go ahead, Sean.
So under the, let's see, budget meeting minutes for Monday, May 11th. If you look under the article EX 10A, Selectman Burgess motion to approve the wages and benefits of a full-time firefighter position, pending the calculations from the finance director. And is that different than what was proposed in the March 10th meeting minutes, where the fire department budget was motion to approve at $307,377.
Under that notation, it says, there's an asterisk that says adding full-time position with benefits.
Okay, perfect. All right.
So that 307, 377 was the standalone amount
With that.
for, and then the full-time position was entered later as Article 10A, and that's what was pending. We didn't have that figure to put into or to provide at the May 11th meeting minutes. Okay. Any other questions? Comments? All right. New business. Road law review. Joe.
Madam Chair, in the package you have recently developed spreadsheet that we've been working on here in-house. You're seeing the first draft of that item. And I'm sharing it with you at this point because I wanted to give you an update, show you what roads have been completed, what roads are still in progress, and then at the bottom are upcoming priority roads. So those are just listed in there. We haven't put pen and paper on what the projects are going to cost. But that plays into where we're at with our second road loans. We took about a year ago the first draw of the $3 million loan, which was $850,000. We knew we needed that for those projects coming up. So remaining, we have 2.1 million left in the tank. And our opportunity to get that out is week from today. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware and hopefully approve of me authorizing that draw so we have those funds available for these projects coming up. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or try to answer any questions about projects that are on the list. Alpine Way, Depot Street, Grandview, Lake Street, Old Skiway, Pickford Road, Pleasant Street, Boston Ave, Robbins Ave, those are all part of the first loan. Those are completed. As you know, Loon Lake Road is outstanding. That's got an FDI component. It's got the Northern Borders grant component. That'll end up costing us about $1 million. Allen Street, we're just wrapping up the punch list items. Keith and I talked about that today. So the roads in progress, some of those are getting close to being wrapped up. But the takeaway, I think, Keith may have some input on this. The takeaway is we're looking forward to what's on the horizon to balance out the loan, the remainder of what's left in the loan in terms of projects. So what I mean by that is I can see in the estimated cost column, probably, so it's 4,879 and change, that we'll have at least 250,000-ish, at least, to work with for projects that weren't in the first two rows here. So Cooney Pond, Milo, those items. We may have more savings if we come in under budget on other projects. So it's kind of conceptual at this point, but I wanted to share with you where we're at, how we're tracking it. And speaking of how we're tracking it, each one of these has a backup sheet. So this is a
Summary.
Yes, this is exactly. This is a summary of each individual project. So I just want to share that with you. The item that is most important to me is to make sure that you're aware of the final draw coming up on a $3 million loan. I would feel better if you authorize me to take that amount, get it into our coffers.
Are we currently paying interest on it regardless of its sitting in there?
No, we're not. We don't start paying interest until
Till you draw it.
which is why we postponed it as long as we could. But the second draw is fixed.
Okay.
If we will take it by next week.
You don't shake it, you lose it.
Guess we need a motion.
I don't want to explain that to town meeting.
Before you motion, can I ask a comment?
Yeah.
In the roads in progress on, is there still time this CC to keep to finish up for some of these projects that we waited a year to do the tarring on? And I'm not picking on you, Keith, I just,
No, this goes back to wait in a contract where I have nothing, I have a contract with, we'll say with pipe. And Ball Mountain Road is a prime example where I've been waiting for surfacing for 2 years and back burner. And one thing I can do there is I can, I guess, avoid a contract and hire somebody else.
So are you withholding, so?
We have money sitting aside the Ball Mountain to finish paving. And as you can see now, the base pavement is there. So reason I'm holding off on surfacing Ball Mountain with another company right now is pipe has to go good for a certain portion of the base pavement where it's elevated crack, center line separation. They've agreed to fix those components. But here I am again without any pavement on the ground.
Yeah.
so again, I'm not trying to be specific to any one project. There's 3 points to why I'm asking this question. Escalating cost of material, escalating cost of all of those things. And then thirdly, what do we do to repair the degradation that's occurred as a result of it? So I know you've got these concerns, Keith, but if I don't ask, I don't get
No,
an answer.
you're upset. Well, justified a question, and I have the same. In my mind, it's the same question. You know, well, again, I use Ball Mountain as a prime example because I know the process. I'm waiting for a contractor to fix the degradation of that, so I can move forward with that. Other roads, obviously, you know, we look at the 3 ones that are holding overhead for a while. We'll look at the sidewalk. That's just a matter of some final touches with additional signage, and then some quantity questions. Little Lake Road is grassy or grading and grassy. So it's the small things that we have to do to close these projects out with. So just each one has a separate situation. So I'm hoping, yes, the plain and simple, I'm hoping, yes, we can finish some of these out in the next month.
Madam Chair, I authorize Joe to be able to withdraw $2.15 million to complete projects. Is that what you?
To do the final draw.
I didn't hear that, Joe. I'm sorry.
To complete the final draw.
Complete the final draw.
Steve's motion.
Second.
And Shelley seconds. Any more questions or comments? All those in favor, Mark?
How long is it gonna take to expend that $2.15 million?
That's a very good question. The hope is by this time next year. That's my hope. But as you know, I don't know if you have this, or you should have it as a packet. We need to refine the scope of this over there, put it all out to bid, these things on the bottom, if there's any surplus.
No, I don't have that now.
Okay.
But I was just thinking, you know, is there any opportunity to get any kind of interest at all on that money to over the next year so that?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
I
just
don't know if
paying-
it'll be any higher than what we're paying.
No, it's gonna be less. There's no question about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Legal RFP.
I just have one. So I guess one of my questions is that I noticed is on the Grandview, the estimated cost was 58, and then it was 94, so that amount is not 152.
Yeah, that's it.
And so the other thing is that I'm looking at Lake Street. And it went from estimate, is that was the final coat and then it ended up costing 145 instead of 14,000? Or is there a zero I'm hoping missing out of that number?
I think the scope changed incredibly. Early on, it was final coat, I'm talking 5-6 years ago, and I think it turned into curbing total overlay of the street.
Correct. So when we looked at, that was part of that continuity back in Main Street. When we looked at the park project came in, the idea was to just redo the bathhouse parking area and then just leave the road as it was. You know, come in, just tie in, and then we had concern about sidewalks. We couldn't do sidewalks without the road. So it all, that's when we had the came to meeting, John had permission to spend money for Lake Street, the new scope of granite curbing, sidewalks, redoing the road, et cetera, et cetera.
And under the overlook sidewalk, is that 30,000 going to be extra added into that figure, or is that already in there?
That's included with that number.
That's included with, okay,
Correct.
so we're under on that. What's the part that's
For now.
with a lot of money that we really, Allen Street, is that it? Allen Street, it looks like the actual cost is like $800,000 more. Is that right?
Scope change. No, so I always argue this list where they were preliminary estimates that didn't even, I mean, scope changed with any projects we've had so far, that without a doubt, but preliminary estimates didn't have a whole lot of engineering numbers behind them. They were a discussion and a table, maybe more so, maybe Joe speak more of that stuff. Yeah, we're seeing Joe speak more to, but I don't think it held to where we obviously it doesn't represent what we have today by any means. Costs went up, we know that over the last 4 years, et cetera. But I think some of these estimates on here were just a compensation piece that were maybe weren't meant to come this far initially as an estimate, in my opinion. I didn't create that.
Right.
But
Yeah, the scope of what turned out on Allen Street is way different from what we're talking about 16 pieces exactly right. If they were real numbers, the scope was different.
I'm just curious of what we can do to, because that could have been another road going forward to stay in line. Was it part of the contract? Was it part, I mean, I just.
As I recall,
Yeah.
especially on that road, the cost just went up exponentially. It was, the estimate may have been a little low to begin with, but just the bids came in, it was just like, okay, so we're not within 9 rows of, you know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And it's just the way it was. And then we decided to take out more money in a bond to take care of the rest of these roads and get the 2 really big ones done, one being Allen Street, the last one is Bloom Lake, and then pack away at all the rest of them. That was John Madigan's thought on it, and we all agreed.
yeah, I don't think 750 by any means included water districts were under and et cetera.
Right.
And do we add like 10% contingencies to each project, or should we start?
We generally do.
It's typically included in the project price.
It's included in the estimate.
Yes.
So then who authorizes using the contingency? Oh yeah, sorry, I'm the banker in me. Like, so do they have to get, is it part of the change order, or is it part of, like, they can't just dip into that money without you saying, yes, okay, I approve you getting into the contingency,
No,
right?
the contractor certainly cannot do
Okay,
that. No,
I'm just checking.
we're
Sorry.
not supposed to.
It's just a lot of money. And the Bald Mountain Road is not fixed yet. I just can't, it blows my mind, that one.
We need to give you some teeth, Keith, so that there's some penalties.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to the request for proposal for legal services. There's a draft presented. Any questions, suggested changes? Shelley?
So I just have a couple of punctuation stuff,
Oh, I'm
but
sure.
the one thing in 3 that's kind of not really clear is that it's like, unless the applicant indicates that the proposal may only be accepted if the applicant is selected to represent the town in every area designated by the applicant. It's like, okay, is that supposed to be like a period and then say the town reserves the right? Because it just runs together, it almost doesn't.
Lawyers love run-on sentences, Shelley.
Huh?
It's a lawyer's love run-on sentences anyway.
Well, I know, but if a lawyer is going out to lawyers, I'm just saying like. That's the only thing, it just didn't flow right reading it, but other than that, everything was fine. To me, anyway.
So you're suggesting a period after applicant and then a capital T for the
Yeah.
town reserves the right
Right.
to, that may give it more emphasis. Anything else?
I just had a couple comments here and there, but that's about it.
All right.
Thanks, Joe. You are for doing that.
All right, does the board want this to post immediately? Or beginning of the year, what are the thoughts?
Is there, you have thought, one versus the other, what you just said? What,
Yeah,
why?
No, just, I mean, I didn't know if we, want to finish out the year with the, after
Is
the
it a
comment.
budget year we finish out?
Yeah,
Or do we finish out
just
the calendar year?
Are we under any legal obligation to the current one?
Right, for the term.
Well, I mean, actually, it will probably help us with budget season, so we might as well post it now. Right?
Yep.
Face coverings. So I asked for, for this to be added under new business. I just wanted to get, the Farmington, the Franklin County's in the red. We've got fair season coming up. The Farmington Fair is going on, Freiburg Fair is going to be happening. Are you guys good with the extra spacing we've got going on here? Go ahead, Ethan.
I went into the Maine State Environmental Testing Lab today, which is where they test for all sorts of nasty stuff. And the sign on their windows said, we want you to wear a mask unless you're vaccinated. So I'm good with this.
I'd like you all to take your masks off so I can hear you
Not happening.
or read your lips. Somewhere.
Personal preference, thanks.
And I understand that that's exactly what this should be, is personal preference. I understand that there are people who have different positions that they feel safer wearing them. I cannot wear one and will not be subject to a mandate of one. And I will leave it at that.
All right, I just had some.
One other point, Cindy, I think we've made accommodations, the spacing is here, nobody's, I can't hear you sometimes, Shelley, and thank you for doing that, because then I can hear. But, we had a doctor and a colleague show up here tonight on masks, and we have Zoom available. I think we're accommodating the masses as best we can.
Okay,
And as long as you're all safe, I'm safe, I'm vaccinated, so.
It was just a question posed from the community. I've reached out to Joe and let him know that the assorted questions I've had that have nothing to do with the board, so.
I brought it in case you're gonna be a hard sell.
No,
here.
I just have to, my husband has a compromised immune system, so,
And that was my understanding of both of your positions.
yeah.
But I ask that you understand mine and not ask why I can't read. Because it's not these issues.
I just gotta say one more thing. I watched the Army Navy game. No, Army Navy game. I don't know. I watched an NFL game last week. It was in Vegas. First one the Raiders played in Vegas. Not important, but when they sang the national anthem, from what I saw, everything they showed the audience, and all the players, coaches, personnel that I saw on the field, none of them had a mask on. The only people that had one on was the Air Force color guard. and there was probably 40,000 people in that stadium. I am perfectly comfortable being in this room without a mask on.
Okay, just wanted that as an agenda item, so it was flushed out publicly, and I can report back to folks that asked. Yes, Mark.
Back to the previous item, the legal RFP, did you folks need to vote on accepting that request for proposals and the posting of it immediately?
It's up to the board. I've got latitude to do that, but if you wanna make it.
Not really my business, I was just kind of curious.
I figured Joe was gonna say something if you wanted something.
Yeah,
It's up to you, but I have the latitude to release RFPs and several things. What's binding is what the board receives it back at their table and it takes action on. But this is one I'm glad, I know the feeling of the board at this point, so.
Good, thank you for that.
comprehensive plan review. So this is another kind of item. We had approved the bylaws of the comprehensive plan review committee, during our meetings, and so there just haven't been any meetings yet that we've been made aware of. So I just wanted an update from Joe.
So Madam Chair, there's no activity on the committee at all. We've put it out there a couple of times a while back, but we don't have anybody on the committee. But I was thinking, after we talked, maybe it came out of our conversation, that if the board was interested, maybe you would consider tasking each of your committees with the items that are in the comp plan. I put one up here just as an example. It was the first one I came to, but each group is spelled out in the plan. I don't know if you can read it or not, but it gives, here's an example: prepare amendments to land use ordinances that require the planning board, et cetera. Responsibility and time frame. So the ordinance committee and planning board, and then it's short term and ongoing. So if you'd like, Tracy and I to make a matrix of who's responsible for what task, and then if you would like to direct that to be distributed to your committees, that may help the committee, or the newly formed committee, hit the ground running.
Got that?
I was going to ask why we had created a new committee, because there was a matrix in place where each of us was sat down and said, this is your responsibility, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours. It was already passed out to everybody. So I was kind of confused that we had to create a new committee to direct the committees that are directed in the comprehensive plan to take care of stuff.
I think part of it had to do, well, it kind of came back up to the surface, was to try and implement the TIF district. So that's where it kind of all, we all started talking about it again.
Like, I know there was already a plan in place, I remember getting it.
That was the spur that kind of, to try and implement the TIF district. And that's sort of like how that impacts our existing ordinances.
So it sounds like there might be a framework already here.
Somewhere, yes.
That'll make our lives a little bit
Yeah, dig through those computers. Maybe the work's already been done. So just nothing's come back to the board, as far as progress reports or whatnot. So like that may, so that would be great.
Okay.
Which you can find out. Town manager report. We've got the department head updates. Any questions or comments from the board or from Joe? Right.
Can I add one?
Yes.
Just want to, I guess, make light of the importance, not only for our infrastructure of cleaning and the operations of our sewer department. Also, we just completed our annual week of line cleaning, high pressure line cleaning. This year was a year that really proved the importance of that when we found that a recent connection for water ended up drilling through our sewer main.
Oh my gosh.
We wouldn't have found it if we did clean that section this year, which would obviously result in a backup. And obviously with a violation of my license, et cetera, et cetera. This contractor, I mean, didn't just nick it, it bullseye right through the middle of this pipe. So it just goes to show that our efforts are being are successful, I guess, not just in cleaning and maintenance, but the inspection process is obviously very, very important, and it's proved to be so. I call it very well cost effective. So to make you aware, the plans obviously with that, the unfortunate part is our new sidewalk. I was able to not pick up the new sidewalk. However, some of the new pavement within a driveway in that portion of the whole sidewalk was removed. It was fixed on Saturday morning with the Water District, Ted Bailey, Vector Company, M&H, Sewer Department. Very, very good effort across the board with those people. So I want to thank all those guys publicly. And we are working on the getting costing to that contractor that created it.
Gotcha?
Nope, he answered it.
Okay.
I
Yes,
want to know who was paying for it.
Was that put in under the road with like line boring?
Yeah, horizontal boring. So it's a costly endeavor anyway. I don't have a rough idea. It's $4,500 to get them here. I mean, there's no guarantee to it.
That was EJP.
This was Enterprise Electric. It's a newer, not I say newer, but veteran personnel that went on their own with a new rig. If I understand that correctly. Boring it is what it is. Irregularly, it's tough to grow rocks, so deflection happens very easily. There's no guarantee to get across any section of the road. Unfortunate part for anybody that hires them is without that, that's no guarantee. So you might get 10 feet and you can't go any further. So in this case, they took the measurements. Unfortunately, the measurements weren't correct. When they took elevations off the They swore they were 2.5 feet below my pipe. And they were smacking. So, but it's a learning lesson for me to be more observant. And I would say, I say more observant, but to have the conversation in place when we do have this happen again. It does happen. It literally does happen. So, verification of the contract, help them out. Verification that what the elevations are, and another lesson learned when we excavated this break was I did get to learn that through this boring they use a gel that helps compact the ground around it. So that hole, it sounds awful, I know, but so it stays firm so that when they drag the drill bit pulls that sleeve across, there's no
Yeah, we know.
Anyway, with that, we excavated the break. We thought we found it at first. There was a hole in the ground. Like we dug a hole, and then there was a hole in the hole. And kind of find out anyway. That boring system is a high pressure line that goes through water, and it created a cavity under the travel lane. On top of my, I could probably curl up in it and explain this cavity. That would have never been found either. So what it caused issues. Until Route 4 had a small sinkhole. I say small, but so another learning lesson that we have to be careful of in that area of other utilities, so that we know that water is going to travel least resistant. So it could create another cavity for a future runoff. So anyway, just want to share that with you, and I'll keep you posted as we tally the cost of that wonderful event.
Oh my. Thank you, Keith. Wow. Yeah, go ahead, Shelley.
Okay, Keith. Winter hours, when do they start for the dump? So they're not open Sunday anymore?
Generally after Thanksgiving.
After, okay. Can we put that on the website?
October 1st, I'm sorry.
October,
I was 2
okay.
weeks later.
Okay.
That's why we see Rich in the doorway.
I was like, I can't remember what the date is, and we're looking online, it doesn't say, it just says winter hours, and then we go, well, I guess I'll go up there, and if it's there, it's there. We thought they were already done, all right.
I give you a combo.
Hmm?
I give you the combo.
All right. A reminder that we have our quarterly meeting at the Dallas Plantation Town Office a week from today at 6 p.m. September 30th, MMA Annual Business Meeting and Voting Credentials. So that is actually in our packets here. What do we do with this, Joe? Just one. Anything? Is anyone going?
Well, that was a question I was gonna ask you, a couple of lines down.
In the last 3 years, they just voted the slate.
Yeah.
We don't have sent anybody, so, or we haven't, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be attending, Madam Chair, and if you want to delegate, if there's let me get a little bit out of order. I was going to ask you here in a step or two, because I made an offer or a promise a couple of months ago, or a month or so ago, that I had signed all the board members up. Well, I've since changed my track on that. So if there are any board members that would like to be signed up to the MMA convention, please let Tracy or I know. And if there is a board member that intends to go on this date, I would recommend delegating the board voting for that person to be your voting delegate at the convention. Aside from that, you won't have a delegate there.
Okay. All right. Now, seeing any board members indicating their ability to attend?
The 30th and the first. Oh, the 30th. 30th is the date.
All right, we've got the front counter closing October 1st for the MMA convention. October 4th, we'll have an executive session for the town manager's performance evaluation. Make sure you have that completed for the meeting. October 6th at 4 p.m. Ribbon cutting for the Range Lakes National Scenic Byway upgrades.
That's an average, Madam Chair.
Yeah, okay, I was just going to ask about the location. All right. Other business, the MMA safety grants. Joe.
Madam Chair, we've got a couple of them in this round. One that Fire Chief Creighton put together. The first I first went through this with him, I said, can you repeat that to me? But after he did, I understood where it was coming from. It's for bulletproof vests. He worked in conjunction with Chief French on it, so some for the police department, two are for the fire department, and they're not going to be going into active live shooting. It's in the bottom here. Because that was my first question. The fire department would not respond to the scene mistake. These vests would add an additional level of protection that the fire department does not have. So we've applied for that. This is the first one, and then the second one, Keith and Tracy worked on for the railing feature out front. And there's a couple of options with this. We're looking hopefully to get an offset on the $16,000 cost of the new railing, but we would entertain funding to rehab the existing railing that's at public road, try to get that project buttoned up. Keith and I are still kind of talking about how we might wrap up the whole facade up there. One of the things in terms of safety is really the railing. So when we get to budget season, we may talk about put a treatment on the blocks, or swap out the blocks, paint the blocks, or do something else. We haven't lost sight of that. We just want to get that to the budget session where we can talk about that. But the two grants are as I described. One for bulletproof vest, the other one for something with the railing
So just a comment on the bulletproof vest one. Typically, they're customized, they're custom fitted. Is that your, no?
No, if they use a strap, they go on the strap on the top, and then they adjust them on the bottom to
Okay.
the size of the person. But they do have expiration dates. I don't know if you know that. They have expiration dates, so, and if somebody were to, because they're not, I mean, the custom size, like for, the vests and stuff like that, only certain ones will fit into those, like I know that the game ones have the green ones, and then that looks like shirts.
Yeah.
So the county's gone to those too, but you can only have a certain size that actually fits in those vests.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think you guys are doing the vest with the shirts, you're just doing the vest on top.
That they can adjust accordingly with the Velcro.
Right, yep.
Okay, that
They
was
do
just,
they do the top, there's Velcro on the top that adjusts to them, and then they have it that go around the waist to do it. Hold on.
all right, so be mindful of expiration dates.
5 years.
Mhm. Anything else, Shelley?
So, and on the other thing is that they're only ordering 2 for the police department. So, will you be, I'm just asking because I know that they have expiration dates. And if you're looking for other, because typically aren't there 3 usually on that the town has hired?
Typically, yes.
Yes, and then you also have the part-time. So would those vests be available for the part-timers to wear those?
I think the other thing with vests is that they're custom to the individual wearing them, right? So it would be, each officer would be assigned their own vest, the way I understand it.
It depends on the style.
You know,
Right.
or the size, but I can get you more information on that.
Good.
Well, I'm just like, if there's 2 vests, I just want to make sure that they're purchasing 4. And so that's 2 and 2. But if typically the departments for the police have 3, and then you have a part-time person, don't you have to make sure that they have all the stuff that they tend to be fitted for?
I think what she's trying to say is, we hope that two bulletproof vests just aren't gonna sit in a closet and not get used
Right.
because they've been, because the fire department wants a couple of them handy. If the police department, because they actually use them, has a need for them,
Right.
that they can use them. That's all. Tracy?
I believe Jared has a fairly new one, so that would only leave the police chief and our other full-time officer. He wears a bulletproof vest.
Right, but you just have to make, when it expire, I didn't know if you guys checked the
And it's
expiration
fairly
date.
new, so maybe they want to set them on a rotation.
Okay.
To-
All right, and then if you have your part-timers, do you have them have a vest?
Well, I don't know how many part-timers do we have right now.
We don't have any real active part-timers. We do have some on the roster, but they're tied up with other places. I can talk with.
I know I've seen Rick, he wears his, but I don't know if he's using his own personal vest, which, I mean, if somebody's working for us, they should probably have their own vest. I don't know if we give them their guns, but
So,
if we fit them.
so do you not want them to apply to the grant?
No, I'm just saying, like, are we gonna be able to use those vests for other people? I mean, are we covered for those that come and help us out with their part-time? Are we fitting them for those, or are they bringing their own vests from if they work for other PDs? I just don't want them to
You
be
guys don't have the
restricted.
answers from, that Chief French would have from.
I would have to check with Chief French. I'm not that versed on it, but I know that they would wear them. They would have them,
Right.
and I could certainly get back to you.
I mean, just leave them in a closet. If someone needs one, they take them, use them. I mean, they don't have, I mean, you wash the outside of them, the bulletproof comes right out from the sleeves that fit them in, so.
All right, moving on to airport CIP. Joe?
Madam Chair, this is just informational that I did have the CIP meeting with the FAA folks last Wednesday, the 15th, in the afternoon. They have, I'm trying to boil this down, they have a version at the FAA that plugs in entitlement funds to repay the grant reimbursement that we didn't get so far from the runway extension. So we got that plugged in ahead of our master plan. I am not in favor of the airport commission, not in favor of, I've talked to them about it. But FAA, unfortunately, a couple of people that needed to be there didn't show up to the Zoom call, so we kind of had to table that. And I think there may be some other things we can talk about when we do reconvene with the FAA, but my biggest concern is I don't want to push the master plan past next year. So I'll let you know how that turns out. I'm meeting with the airport commission next week, and I'll fill that in on what I know. There hasn't been a second date or a follow-up date set yet. I haven't heard back. So that's pretty much where that's at. The next item on the plan would be the master plan update, which was originally scheduled for this year, but got postponed because of COVID and other things until next year in our version of the plan. But FAA is interested in paying us back with entitlement funds, which I'm not ready to do yet. So that's really just the update. And I will follow up with the airport commission on the 27th.
Follow-up communications, Evelyn and Bob Taylor with Alpine Acres. So nice response, I mean.
Yeah, we had a couple of phone calls the other night, the conference call, and I had 2 or 3, individual phone calls. We did our due diligence, followed up. Thank you, Bailey.
Thank you for the follow-up. Rangy Lakes Builder Supply Crosswalk.
Response to that,
I
since
haven't
it was
seen-
10 days ago.
I haven't seen anything yet. Have you seen anything?
No response?
Not yet.
So we'll look for some follow-up in at our next meeting, I guess, whether it's their response or maybe follow-up letter with a deadline.
Right.
Okay, anything else, Joe, you want to fill us in on before I move on to town manager report? Okay,
I think we've covered it all.
all right. Selectboard Communication. Steve, you got anything?
I do. First of all, I'd like to thank Ethan for that lovely article in the paper about 9/11. I'd like to thank the town for the great display of remembrance and dedication to our armed forces, our firefighters, et cetera. I think they did an exceptional job, and whoever organized it all, congratulations. I feel bad. I drove through and it was a happenstance, it was all together. I called up and found out, oh yeah, you were notified, and damn, I need reminders. But it was wonderful what I saw.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I know Bailey is working hard with this thing in Aquasic, this building, but the calls I've received it's numerous, there's quite a few. You talked about it, I just wanted you to know that there were some folks that were gonna come and talk to you tonight that will not, but did not. So that's it, thank you.
Ethan? Okay. Shelley? What's that?
Oh, this was part of our packet.
Yeah, I put that on the desk, Madam Chair. That was something that, the request of paper talks, they asked that I shared that with you. Didn't commit a time for the agenda. It doesn't really require any official action. Just individually, if you want to respond to that, you can.
Okay. Anything else? Ethna? I just, there was a nice newspaper article regarding the vote coming up on November 2nd for the extra 2 commissioner seats for Franklin County. I would like to share that article on Facebook in the public forum, just because, I mean, I imagine there are a lot of people that don't realize that we could be a lot better served in the county if we had these 2 additional seats approved. So I'm just wanting to let you know, I'd like to post that and just to educate the public. Okay. And it clearly states in the newspaper article that there's no cost for this extra vote to the county, that, you know, it's something anyway. So, all right, I'll do that. Next, a executive session motion to, need a motion to go into executive session.
Steve, thanks, David.
I don't know if we're there.
I gotta go too.
I need,
So,
Oh, okay.
break?
Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Hold
Night, Mark.
you know, let's get the motion to do so we can break things down and then,
on. Madam Chair, I make a motion, we go to an executive session pursuant MRSA 4056D labor negotiation. I forgot the chapter, subchapter.
Second.
so Ethan's motion, Steve seconds, all those in favor? That's unanimous. All right. We'll declare us out, executive session.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we sign the union contract as presented with changes.
Steve's motion. And Ethna seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Thank you, Annalee.
Well, thank you so much. It's so good to have this done.
Absolutely.
And Joe, you're going to get those 3 signature pages tonight, are you?
I've got them in my hand. I'm going to pass them over right now.
And then I'm going to personally deliver these pages to the union for their signature. So they can't say it got lost in the mail. They're just a few miles from where I live.
Thank you. All right, a motion
Sign
to,
my line everywhere.
I didn't even see the print on the side, I just picked a line.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ethna's motion, Ethan seconds, all those in favor? And that's unanimous.
I didn't even know I had a line, I just kept signing, Steve. What can I say?
Thank you, Annalee. Good night.
Wow.
Too many things on both sides.
There you go.
So thank you all for doing that. And we'll talk next time so we can get going on the salary survey about those towns. So have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Does it matter if my name is spelled wrong in this?
Correct it.